Hello, and welcome to On My Shelf. Today I'm sharing a captivating middle grade book about a boy who's tasked with a 7th grade English assignment he's not so thrilled about that ultimately teaches him about friendship, community, and himself. The Labors of Hercules BEAL by Gary D. Schmidt is about Hercules BEAL, who's named after the mythical Hercules. When his brother, who's his guardian, makes him go to a new middle school, he's assigned a project for English, somehow duplicating the experiences of the mythical Hercules in real life. Nemean lions? Hydra? How's he supposed to fight those? But he begins his journey into self-discovery by completing each labor and writing a reflection about it for his strict English teacher. And along the way, he discovers that he doesn't have to do it alone. He has a team of people, friends, family, and community members, who are more than willing to help. Gary D. Schmidt is also the author of The Wednesday Wars, Okay for Now, Just Like That, and many other books for children and teens. This is the first book of his that I have read, but you can be sure that I've added those other ones to my extremely long to-be-read list. I really enjoyed this book from start to finish. The characters, the voice, the plot, the emotional arc, it had everything. But here are some of my favorite elements. Number 1, mythology and symbolism. Hercules had a school project that tied into Greek mythology. He had to examine the labors of Hercules through the lens of real life. I loved this element of the book because it gave sort of a modern-day interpretation of these mythological stories. As I read about Hercules' trials in the real world, I found myself trying to guess what the main character Hercules would label as the Nemean lions, or what he'd call his metaphorical Hydra. Kids learn, too, to connect old stories with their lives today, and the value of that synthesis can't be underestimated. It was also fun that the main character's name was Hercules, so in a way, it was like a retelling of the mythological Hercules story, but without magic. It was brilliant. Number 2, the relationships. Hercules had realistic relationships with his friends, with his brother, with his brother's girlfriend. They annoyed him and frustrated him at times, but they also comforted and bolstered him. I loved that he had so many strong and grounded relationships. At one point, several of the characters told him, "You're not alone, even if people leave." I loved those moments when they made sure Hercules knew he didn't have to face his labors alone. Number 3, the timeline. The project Hercules is assigned lasts his whole school year. It gives the story structure, but it also allows for the necessary learning pieces and healing to take place. As Hercules endured his labors, he was moving toward a final goal, coming to terms with his parents' death. He was moving through his grief as he passed through each labor, and that takes time. Here's what I enjoyed about the book from a craft perspective. Number 1, the reflections Hercules writes about his labors. I love when middle grade books use actual school projects in them because school is so much a part of kids' lives. After every one of his labors, the main character Hercules had to write a reflection to turn into his teacher. The reflections are in the book, and his teacher would write feedback on each reflection. It's kind of a sneaky way to teach kids about writing, and I found it delightful. Number 2, the wise sayings of the elders. At one point in the story, Hercules' brother's girlfriend says, "It's okay to not be okay with your parents' death." Hercules needed to hear that. And his teacher tells him it's okay to be angry. Hercules also needed to hear that. I love these moments that also tell the kid readers it's okay to be sad and angry. Sometimes we shy away from those wise elders when we're writing because we don't want to be too obvious. But that's a real experience of kids' lives. They hear wise things from people who have lived longer all the time. Why wouldn't we embrace that in our stories? After all, they get to choose whether or not they listen, just like our characters do. Number 3, giant metaphors. I loved that this entire story was a giant metaphor for moving through grief. But also, there were small metaphors, namely in the 12 labors. Hercules' assignment is to relate the labors of the mythological Hercules to his real life, his own labors. He's not actually taking the belt of Hippolyta. He is taking something that represents that belt. It provided a fantastic example to young readers, showing them not only how to use metaphors in their own lives and reflections, but also how to look for similarities in stories in their lives. So here's what we can take away from this book. Number 1, look for interesting tie-ins with your stories. Readers ages 8 to 12, which is where this book is targeted, love mythology. So Schmidt adding mythology to his book already makes it an easy appeal to today's readers. Just like I enjoyed guessing what Hercules would call his Cretan bull and how he'd find a modern-day Cerberus, kids will likely try to do the same. We can add fun elements like this into our stories, and readers will remember them for ages. Take readers on a real-world hunt while teaching them how to apply old myths to their real lives. That's what I want to do. Number 2, spend as much time as possible on relationships. This goes for in writing and in life. What are we without our relationships? Without the people who assure us we aren't alone? The people who carry us through our own labors? Number 3, give it time. This also goes for both our stories and our lives. In stories, things don't have to happen in 1 or 2 months or a week. They can take 6 months or a year. Draw things out. Let characters learn at the speed of a school year or a summer or an entire calendar year. In life, things take time. Healing requires time. Understanding requires time. Love needs time. We can't try to rush those things because we'll miss the power they have in our lives. We may miss what they have to teach us. Go slow. Enjoy the journey. That's it for today's On My Shelf. If you're interested in hearing an author's perspective on books, movies, and sometimes TV shows, be sure to subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.